I'd like to introduce the president of League of Women Voters of San Diego, Lori Thiel.
Great, thank you, Jean. Hi, everybody, and welcome to tonight's event. We are delighted to support the North County League in their efforts tonight. We are providing the technology for this event tonight, so we're hosting and pulling together the slides and making sure the presentations run, and we're delighted to do that because redistricting is so important to a robust democracy, as you will discover in the presentation that you're about to see. So again, we're happy to host, we're happy to help, and we are delighted that you're here attending and learning about this very important process that we're going through right now and in the coming weeks. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the president of the League of Women Voters of North County, San Diego, Ann Olmstead.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it. We really do appreciate you hosting this also. And welcome to everyone who has come tonight. That is just, we're delighted to have you. The League of Women Voters North County, San Diego, and League of Women Voters San Diego are pleased to co-host a program featuring two North County League members, Patricia Sine of the California Independent Redistricting Commission and Rosette Garcia of the County of San Diego Independent Redistricting Commission. The importance of redistricting cannot be overstated. It is the basis for voting in districts at all levels of government. In the past, gerrymandering district boundaries to favor one political party over another was common. And unfortunately, it's still happening in states which have not yet created independent redistricting commissions. We are fortunate that California in 2008, with intense support from the League of Women Voters of California, passed an initiative establishing the California Redistricting Commission. Today, we will learn how the lines are drawn. Patricia and Rosette, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today.
Thank you, Lori, Ann, and the League of Women Voters of San Diego, North County, and North County League, our redistricting staff, and all of you for joining us today. Hello, I am Patricia Sinai, or Patricia Sinai. First, a legal side note. This is an educational opportunity and not a public session, so neither of us can receive any public input regarding maps, districts, or lines. There will be plenty of opportunities at later dates for you to share your thoughts with our full commissions. Tonight's focus will be an overview of redistricting, why it's important, how the county and state independent redistricting processes are similar and different, and most importantly, Rosette and I will share how you can be part of the redistricting process. We encourage you all to get involved. So with that, let's get started. Hi, Rosette. Can you please tell us a little about yourself and how you came to serve on the San Diego County Independent Redistricting Commission?
Thanks, Patricia. I want to say that I'm so delighted to be here tonight, and also to tell you that it's been a pleasure to work with you in putting this presentation together. I'd also like to thank both local leagues for hosting this event, and especially Ann for the great introduction and setting the stage for tonight's discussion, and for cooking up this event. This event was her brainchild. I'd also like to thank those of you who are attending tonight. I hope our presentation is informative and spurs you to participate in our redistricting process. So to your question, Patricia, let me start with a little background about myself. I'll try to be brief. I earned a BS in biology many years ago and worked as an administrator at an academic cancer research organization. I also have a graduate degree in literature and writing, which I earned much later. And then I taught at the university level, and I also taught a GRE prep course for first generation college graduates applying to graduate school. Throughout my adult life, I have been actively engaged in my community. The fact that I've been involved with the league off and on since 1989, when I first joined, when I lived on the North Shore of Chicago, I think is testimony to that fact. I'm originally from Texas, but I've lived in San Diego for most of the past 30 years. in North County, where my husband and I raised our 2 children. I've done a variety of community volunteer work, including running for and getting elected to the Cardiff School Board, working on a school bond campaign there to modernize our aging buildings. I have volunteered to register voters. I have volunteered to work at precincts on election day. As a nonprofit board member, I've served on budget and finance, development, and bylaws committees. I'm a current member of the San Diego Women's Foundation, proud member of the San Diego Women's Foundation, and of the board of the local Planned Parenthood affiliate. I'm basically the kind of person who raises their hand when someone asks for a volunteer. So as far as the San Diego Independent Redistricting Commission, that's a mouthful. We just call ourselves the IRC. I knew about redistricting since California had moved to independent redistricting back in 2010. But I discovered that our county was going to be forming an independent redistricting commission when I was at the county website researching another issue. So I was intrigued. I knew it was an important process. So I decided to apply and ultimately was successful. We are a commission of 14 citizen volunteers responsible for redrawing the boundaries for the 5 supervisorial districts in San Diego County. I want to say it was not a simple matter of just volunteering. There are specific qualifications that commissioners must possess. You must have analytical skills, the ability to understand and apply state and federal laws, the ability to be impartial, and knowledge of and appreciation for the county's diversity. So an application had to be completed in which you described how your experience and your background qualified you to be a commissioner. Basically, 4 pretty tough essay questions. I completed the application, and it turned out that about 300 people in the county applied. And that initial pool was narrowed to 60 applicants by the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. The next step was a random drawing. And if you were lucky, you were one of the first 8 commissioners selected to the commission. I wasn't so lucky, but I was still in the running because the next step was for those 8 initial commissioners to review the remaining applications, and they had the job of selecting the final 6 commissioners to round out and fill out that our commission. In addition to the qualifications that I just mentioned, they had to consider party affiliation because the commission is required to be proportionate to the political party breakdown of our county. And they also had to consider diversity because we need to have a commission that represents, to the extent possible, the diversity of our county. I'm pleased to say that I was selected in that second round and that our commission does, in fact, achieve all of those requirements. We're pretty diverse. We're evenly distributed throughout the county. We're 7 men and 7 women, 6 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 4 no party preference. And we bring a wide variety of backgrounds, experiences, and expertise to the commission. I'm really excited to be a part of this commission and to be working on this worthy project. One final point, and a very important one, we are an independent commission. We operate completely independent from the influence of our elected officials. That's enough about me, I think. Patricia, how about you? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you ended up on the statewide commission, and if the process was the same?
Sure, thanks. So the family folklore goes that when I was in 3rd grade, I came running home excited because my teacher had said I can be anything I want to be. And I decided I was going to be the first female president of the United States. And my mom wasn't sure what to do with that. Should she pop my bubble or continue to support a dream that she knew I couldn't achieve? And the reason was, well, she finally decided truth is best. They were trying to raise us to be truthful people. So she said, sorry, you were born in Mexico, and so you can't be president of the United States. And unfortunately, you can't be president of Mexico either, because in Mexico, both parents need to be born in Mexico. And my mom's Peruvian and my dad's Argentine. And when my dad got home, I went running to him and said, Papi, I just learned I can't be president of the United States or Mexico. And he said, it's okay, mija. I grew up and I was told I couldn't be president either, because in Argentina, you need to be Catholic, and I was Jewish. So I think that was the start of me trying to figure out how to make sure everybody found their place in our civic society. So fast forward, after graduating from UCLA, I moved to DC and worked to promote human rights and civic engagement in Latin America and the Caribbean. After 7 years in DC and earning my master's in international relations, I decided I really wanted to work locally. I moved back to California, where I led efforts at community foundations to naturalize vulnerable legal immigrants living in the Bay Area and in Southern California. Also, while at the San Diego Foundation, I led efforts to increase community leadership programs and community problem solving by all San Diegans, including being on the staff team that helped launch the San Diego Women's Foundation. For the past 17 years, I've owned my own consulting business. I taught a class on public service at UC San Diego, and I was appointed to the Encinitas Union School District, where I served for 2 years. So there's a lot of intersections in our background. The state's redistricting application was very similar to the counties. It took a whole year though. And so it started with 22,000 people submitting their interest to apply. They really made it seem like it was going to be easy to get in. They asked a few questions, you submitted it, and then they reviewed them. 17,000 were invited to submit a much more intense application. I call it a mini grad school application. With 5 questions and 3 letters of recommendation and our financials. 2,200 people decided, yes, I want to do that full application. From those 2,200 were reviewed, and 120 were invited to interview, and that was at the beginning of the pandemic. So some were interviewed live and others were interviewed via Zoom. I don't know how many of you remember what life was like before you really understood Zoom. So a 90-minute interview on Zoom was a little stressful. From there, the 60 were selected and sent to the leadership of the state legislature for their review. Then with 35 applicants left, we too had a random ping pong ball lottery, and 8 were selected. And those 8 selected the final 6. I too was not lucky, so I like to consider myself selected. The final 14 are the most diverse group of people that I've had the privilege of working with. 8 women, 6 men, 5 Republican, 5 Democrats, and 4 no party preference. Our lived and professional experience is quite varied. We definitely reflect the diversity of our great state. Prisette, I think a good place for us to begin is having you tell us, what is redistricting?
Thanks for that question. Redistricting is the process of redrawing district boundaries to achieve roughly equivalent populations in each district. We redraw new boundaries every 10 years based on new census data. And as you know, our federal government conducts a census every 10 years, and I'm sure you heard plenty about the census in 2020. And this is the time when our government counts all individuals residing in the United States at the location where they live. Counting everyone who lives in our county, in our state, and in our country is important because our Constitution sets population as the basis for sharing political power. Mm-hmm. So now we've defined what redistricting is. Patricia, I'm going to ask you a 2-part question here about redistricting. Why do we need to redraw district lines after each census count? And the second part of that question, what lines will the State Commission, the CRC, be drawing?
Well, as you mentioned, the census results are used to draw new maps every 10 years to account for the ways that populations have changed and moved across the state and districts. It is important to note that a lot changes in 10 years. Just think of your own neighborhood and how it has changed. Now expand that to the entire county and the state. People are born, people pass away and move. They move within California, out of California, and into California. Communities grow and shrink. With these community shifts come changes in communities' priorities, interests, and goals. In short, areas where there was once roughly the same number of people become unequal, as this process is used to make sure all districts are equal and fairly represented. Now, the maps that we'll be drawing at the California Redistricting Commission, or the Citizens Redistricting Commission, are 4 different government bodies. We will be drawing one, the congressional, which will be about 53 districts, with each district having about 700,000 people. Because of population changes, California may lose a congressional seat. State Senate, which will be 40 districts with about 931,000 people. The State Assembly with 80 districts at 466,000 people. And finally, the Board of Equalization will be 4 districts with 9 million in each. Rosette, can you tell us about the lines that the county IRC will be drawing? Are the reasons for redrawing the same as at the county level?
Well, let me answer your second question first. Yes, the IRC will redraw maps for the same reasons you described. We know that there have been population shifts in the county and that there are areas that are more or less densely populated than in 2010. And we know that there are new and growing communities in the county today that were not even present in 2010. So as for your first question regarding what lines we'll be drawing, our job is a little less complex than yours. We're only drawing the lines for the supervisors districts. San Diego County is divided into 5 supervisorial districts, each represented by a different supervisor. I live in District 5, for example. It starts kind of the western end of Rancho Santa Fe and goes pretty far east. It's a lot of rural area. Patricia, I think you're probably a resident of District 3. Yep. So yeah, we have different representatives, even though we actually don't live that far away from each other. So we will be redrawing the 5 supervisorial district lines to make sure, again, that they have an equal number of people in each district. But there are other criteria that we have to consider when we're drawing these district lines. And maybe now's a good time to talk about that. Patricia, why don't you walk us through the criteria that the state will be using for drawing, for redistricting?
Sure. So the state must follow the following criteria in this order of priority when drawing district maps. 1 comes from the Constitution, and it says that districts must be nearly equal in population. 2, districts must comply with the Voter Rights Act to ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. 3, districts must be drawn contiguously so that all parts of the district are connected to each other. Districts must minimize, number 4, I'm sorry, districts must minimize the divisions of cities, counties, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the extent possible. We'll be talking a lot about communities of interest later on. Districts should be geographically compact such that nearby areas of population are not bypassed for more distant populations. This requirement refers to density, not shape. So you might still see districts that look a little funny, and the reason they're not straight lines is because city lines and county lines and communities are not straight lines. Where practical, we will try to nest, meaning each Senate district should be comprised of 2 complete and adjacent assembly districts, and the Board of Equalization districts should be comprised of 10 complete and adjacent state Senate districts. I want to repeat that we need to follow these in this order of priority. So getting to 5 and 6 sometimes can be difficult. In addition, we're not allowed to take into consideration the place of residence where incumbents and political candidates may live while we're creating the maps. And districts may not be drawn for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, a political candidate, or a party. Rosette, are these the same criteria you're using for the county?
Actually, yes, except for that last one about nesting and assembly districts and all that. It's a little bit confusing. I understand what it is, but no, we don't, that does not pertain to the county. But we are required to use all the same criteria in the same order of priority, beginning with creating districts of roughly equivalent population size. And for the county, it looks like each district will have roughly 650,000 residents in them. But we do have about 10% plus or minus in terms of wiggle room. It would be exceedingly difficult to, have an exact number in each district. So there's a little wiggle room there. So we start there, making sure all districts are equally populated, and then proceed as you described, complying with the Voting Rights Act, ensuring contiguity, and so on and so forth. We also have a couple of additional criteria that pertain only to our county. And just briefly, it's two things. One, we must draw lines so that at least 3 districts out of our 5 have an unincorporated territory. And 2 of those districts must have a geographic area that are predominantly outside of the incorporated cities. So as a point of reference, the County of San Diego includes 18 incorporated cities, most of them in the western 1/3 of the county. But much of the county is unincorporated territory, and that's land that's outside the boundaries of any of those 18 incorporated cities. So we've defined redistricting. We've reviewed the criteria that we're going to be using. I have another question, one that I've been asked and one that we also talked about in our commission. Why should we care about redistricting? I'm going to punt that question to you. How would you answer that, Patricia?
Thank you, Rosette. You owe me one. Redistricting is about community and ensuring that the communities have a say on how government power, funding, and programs are distributed locally. Redistricting has been used at times to exclude communities from political power. By fully participating in and monitoring the upcoming redistricting process, more communities may have an opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Because government affects all of us, redistricting affects us. So speaking up about your community is critical to help keep your community whole to the extent possible. This ensures that your voice is heard by your elected leaders when making decisions such as the quality of funding for your child's school or determining your tax rates. Your input is valuable and in shaping our new political boundaries. So please get involved. Rosette, can you tell us a bit more why San Diegans should care about redistricting? Also, why do independent redistricting commissions even matter?
Those are good questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. As for the first question, I'm going to try and answer this from the point of view of redistricting at the county level. Our County Board of Supervisors operates a budget of over $6.5 billion. And the county is the responsible agency for providing a number of services among, for example, public health, like all the services around the COVID-19 response, distribution of the vaccine, for example, election services, voter registration, roads, parks, libraries, law enforcement, social services like CalFresh and Medi-Cal, jails. It's a long list that I could go on, but I won't. But what is important to know is that whether you live in an incorporated city or in an unincorporated area in the county, and sometimes that's confusing, but it really doesn't matter. If you live in the county, the decisions made by our supervisors about how the county budget gets allocated and how it gets spent, it will affect you. So how we draw these districts and how communities and neighborhoods get grouped together or separated can affect who gets elected and whose voices are heard on election day. So I think those are pretty good reasons to care. As for your second question, why do independent redistricting commissions matter? Well, I think Anne in her introduction actually answered some of this part of this question for me. They matter because they have been created to ensure the ideal of one person, one vote, of impartiality, and of fairness. And as Anne mentioned in her introduction, historically, politicians drew the electoral maps. Indeed, that is still the case in most of the country. And too often the result is maps that serve political interests and not the public good, and where gerrymandering is common. So as I pointed out earlier, these redistricting commissions that we have in California are independent of the influence of elected officials, and we are guided by strict criteria. We're also expected to conduct our business in public and with public input. So I think we can expect for the outcome to be fairer maps, because the power of drawing the boundaries will be in the hands of the people and not of politicians. So I have a slide actually that illustrates some of the points I've just been making. Kim, can you pull up that slide? Let's see if we can. Oh, great. I hope everybody can see that well. So on this slide, you see basically two diagrams of the same population. And in each, they've been divided equally into 4 districts. So technically, they have complied with that very first, requirement that districts have equal population. But on the left, I hope you can see this. You can see a map where the minority population, you see a minority population which makes up 25% of the entire population. But in this scheme, the minority population has been separated and thus effectively silenced. You can see that this map indicates that the minority population is really not likely to have a fair shot at electing someone who will represent them. On the right, however, you see an alternative scheme. And in this scheme, the minority population remains largely intact, so that they are now a majority of the population in one of the 4 districts of their area. And I would say it would empower them to have their voices heard on election day. I would also say that it represents a fairer map where one of the 4 districts is majority minority, and that actually mirrors the population. 1 out of 4 residents is a member of that minority. So thanks, Kim. You can take that slide down. I just want to call out for those attendees who are attending from outside San Diego County, that there are 3 other trailblazing counties in our state who have formed independent redistricting commissions. They are Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and San Francisco County. So if you live there, you have an opportunity to participate with them. And here in San Diego County, I'd also like to mention that the city of San Diego and Chula Vista are also have also formed independent redistricting commissions and are using them to draw their maps. Patricia, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, and in some cities, they're using a hybrid model where they have an advisory committee versus an independent redistricting commission. So it's just check in with your city and see how they're doing their redistricting. I am so proud to be from San Diego County, and we all should be proud that California was the first state to have an independent redistricting commission. This is our 2nd seated commission. The first was in 2010, and they did a marvelous job. Thank you all commissioners for your service. It is important to note that the League of Women Voters California was one of the leads in ensuring California's success in having an independent redistricting process. And it is a priority of the League of Women Voters US to expand the numbers of states with independent redistricting commissions. Rosette, what data will the IRC use to draw the lines?
Well, that's actually a pretty short answer, Patricia. We will be using 2 sources of information to redraw districts: census data and public input. We need public input to help us learn and understand communities of interest. I think we'll go into that in a bit more detail in just a moment, but staying with the topic of what data we are using, Patricia, I think the CRC uses an additional set of data. Am I right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and when you say that the answer is simple, it's simple, but not easy. So yes, you're right. We use the same data, census and communities of interest, and we're using reapportionment numbers for drawing congressional lines, meaning the number of federal House seats California will be allocated. As I mentioned earlier, because of population changes, this will be the first time in the history of California that we'll lose a congressional seat. Now, when you lose a seat, it just doesn't disappear. We don't just pull it out. We actually start the maps from the very, very beginning. So all congressional districts will see a change. This might be a good time to address the census delays, if you're okay with that, Rosette? Okay. So the COVID pandemic came at the worst possible time for the decennial census, leading to significant delays. And thank you to all who helped in getting the count. The Census Bureau was supposed to produce state population totals by December 31st of last year, and data for the decennial redrawing of legislative districts by April 1st. Well, April Fools, we didn't get it. Now the state totals won't be available until the end of this month, and the redistricting data is expected between mid-August and late September. So we ask you to be patient when we tell you we don't really know our timeline. We can't give you exact dates, but we can tell you that this delay gives us more time to collect from the public community maps or communities of interest. And having said that, we'll have more time on the front end, but once the census data does arrive, this timeline will put a bit more pressure on the actual drawing of the lines. Please know that we're working at the state level, we're working closely with diverse stakeholders to create a process that allows for robust public participation in redistricting and takes into account the 2022 election timeline. Another new aspect of redistricting process for California is that throughout California, the incarcerated people will be counted at their last known home address prior to their incarceration, instead of the address of the facility where they were held. Rosette, you mentioned COIs, communities of interest. What are they?
We finally got to communities of interest, and you're right, we generally refer to them as COIs or COIs. So here's the definition. A COI is a population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. COIs do not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. Your COI might coalesce around the fact that you share a common culture, but there are many other ways to define a COI. Another example of a COI might be a neighborhood that is adjacent to a shipping port, because the impacts or effects of having a shipping port as a neighbor could be the basis for identifying yourselves, having common interests. Patricia, what else would you add about COIs? And since public input is so vital to us in learning about COIs, how can the public, why don't you walk us through how the public can tell us about their COI or community of interest?
Sorry. Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the good description of community of interest. I just want to add that COIs or communities of interest cannot include relationships to political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. So as you said, we need to know where groups that live, work, play, and celebrate together are located. And importantly, how where district lines are drawn may affect them. Communities of interest can be described by creating community maps and telling us about your community. While there are no clear rules on how to define a community of interest, the following are tips to help you describe your communities. 1, oral testimony. Collect personal stories. They're powerful Share examples of things members of your community have in common. That what makes your community unique? Imagine describing your community to a visitor from out of town. Do your neighbors share certain celebrations, traditions, like street festivals or parades? Are there important places where your communities gather? What is the history of how your community came together? 2, collect written testimonies. Write a written description can be used to tell your community story. Describe what connects people and why it's important that they are kept together during redistricting. Whenever possible, include statistics to support your testimonies. Consider using reliable sources such as the Census Bureau, Veterans Administration, or the California Department of Education. 3, community issues. Communities often get involved in redistricting because they feel their issues have not been adequately addressed by the elected representatives. Highlight community issues in personal stories and written narrative. Help demonstrate the importance of having elected officials who understand and respond to your community needs. Has your community come together to advocate for important services, better schools, roads, or health centers in your neighborhood? Have you worked for more recognition or support of your community? And number 4, boundary maps. So once you've collected the stories, you've written it down, got the statistics, also figured out your issues, then it's time to talk about putting it all on a map. Create a map for your neighborhood or area. Mark the streets, street names, and significant locations. You can include significant landmarks, gathering places. It may be helpful to have or create a name for your community area to be a reminder of what makes your community unique. On our website, we draw the lines ca.org. We have a tool that can help you draw your map. It's an electronic tool, kind of like a Google map, and it'll walk you through this process and allow you to add the narrative. If technology is not the way you want to go, we also have a paper tool that walks you through the same process. Please note that you can belong to more than one community, and each community map may look a little different. Also, you may submit different communities of interest or community maps depending on the level of redistricting process. For instance, you would not share a community map of your dog owner group wanting a dog park in Escondido to the state redistricting, but you would submit it to the city, to a city redistricting effort. When you ask for your community of interest or community map, when we ask for them, we are not asking you to draw the full state map or even a district map. Just give us a snapshot of your community. Help us put a face to the data. Each community map is a Lego piece. And along with the census data, this will give us the ability to create the state's district maps. Rosette, any additional suggestions for communities on how they can begin to define their communities of interest?
No, I think you really did a beautiful job of explaining that and how to describe your COI. But I do have 2 things I'd like to add. One, you mentioned an electronic tool that will be available at your that is already available at your website. We do not have a similar tool yet at our website, but I expect that we will at some point. So stay tuned. And 2, I just want to comment a little bit about our focus on communities of interest. You may be wondering why we're spending so much time talking about them. And it's because a critical source of information, maybe the most critical source of information about COIs, will necessarily come from the public, from people telling us about their COI. The census data will give us some information about neighborhoods and communities, but it won't and it can't tell us about issues and concerns that bring a community together. So public input matters. And I want to take a moment to share a specific example that will drive that point home. And it's something that happened here in San Diego County, and it illustrates the power of public input. So before 2010, prior to the last redistricting, the Barrio Logan community was split between 2 supervisorial districts. Part of it was in District 1 and another portion of it had been assigned to District 4. So during the 2010 redistricting process, the county heard from that community, and they were requesting that they be unified and be placed together in one supervisorial district. So when the map was redrawn, in fact, the community of Barrio Logan was restored and assigned wholly to District 1. And all I can say is that that might not have happened were it not for that community coming forward and providing that public input. So we've covered communities of interest and how public input is so important to us. This might be a good time to discuss how our commissions plan to engage with the public and get that public input. And this is about the last part of our presentation. I want to acknowledge that it's a truly significant undertaking for the State Commission. California has over 40 million people living in 248 cities within 58 counties. Our task at the county may not be as daunting. We're one county with a little over 3 million people, but it's still a challenge. And we fully intend and fully expect to reach all residents in all distant corners of our county. And we are thinking and planning carefully so that we can engage as many county residents as possible. Patricia, would you like to walk us through the state's plans to engage the public?
Sure. Now, redistricting is exciting and daunting at all levels. The responsibility we have as citizens on these independent redistricting commissions can keep you up at night. So I wouldn't say one is easier or harder than the other. There are several phases in the redistricting process and ways for the public to engage in the process. Rosette, as I describe each of our state phases, please inform us about the county's process. So we start our public awareness phase in the winter and spring, and we'll probably go into the summer as well, since we have some time. And this is a time where we ask if you have a meeting or convening and you want a commissioner to come and present like we are today, just to invite us and we'll be there. Rosette, do you have anything to add about the public awareness phase?
Right. So we have the very similar, our phase one, the first phase of our process is, you're calling it public awareness, we're calling them educational events. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we're just launching them now. Tonight is our first event. So yeah, very excited about that. So we plan to initiate some of those events and we will schedule them and post them on our website. But we also are hoping to get requests for those presentations. We have, 14 commissioners and we're willing and able to get out and speak to organizations who would like to hear from us. You can check our schedule as we schedule those meetings or request a commissioner at our website, sandiegocounty.gov/redistricting. And don't worry, we're going to have a slide at the end with all this information. We'll do as many of these presentations between now and early summer or even beyond if they're, people want them. We'll do as many of them as our schedules permit. I also want to mention that we are in the process of procuring an outreach consultant who will assist us with our efforts in engaging the public. And we expect to have that consultant in place in early summer. So that's phase one, very similar to yours. Great.
Well, and then phase two, we're looking at spring and summer, and that's when we collect the communities of interest, the COIs. We're in the process of designing an accessible, inclusive, and transparent process. In the past, they're usually hearings, but we're thinking creatively since we do have the COI tool this year. And if there's a different ways where we can encourage people to complete the tool and then have conversations. Having said that, nothing is official yet. We're still in the design phase, but we do invite you to go to our website. We draw the lines ca.org and look at our tool. How about you all?
So yes, phase two, if we want to sort of organize the process that way, phase 2, the next phase would be when we begin holding public hearings. This is the period when we will be gathering public input about communities of interest, trying to get that data. We are required to hold a minimum of 7 public hearings, but our intention is to do more. And information on those hearings will be posted on our website, and we will also be using all the tools we can think of with the help of our consultant to get the word out about those public hearings. Email blasts, social media, traditional media, posters, flyers. And of course, right now, well, let me just say, in fact, one of the things we'd like to hear from the public now is how we can best engage with you.
Yeah.
Where are you? Where do you get your news? Where do you gather? And with that information, we can then be more effective at reaching out to you. But now would also be a good time to point out that because of the pandemic, we're conducting all of our business remotely. And in some ways that has been easier for a lot of people because you can attend a meeting like tonight from the comfort of your home in your bedroom slippers, if that's what you want to do. But we are also aware of and sensitive to the fact that internet, technology, computers, all of that pose challenges and obstacles for some members of our community. And so we're paying attention to that, and we're also trying to be creative and innovative, and trying to make sure that we're reaching everybody, or as many people as we can. And of course, we're monitoring the situation, and at some point, we may be doing hybrid events, or we may just be able to get out there and rub elbows with the public. So that's our second phase.
Yeah, and, you bring up a good point. For us, accessibility has been critical from the very beginning. We've talked about all different types of accessibility. And one of the things that we have taken to heart is language access. And so even, our COI tool is in 12 languages. So you don't need to speak English to be able to use it. We do have it so you can use it in 12 different languages. And I did want to also share that when you submit a COI tool, if you give us your email address, we will email you a copy of your COI that you submitted, and you can share that with your local redistricting efforts if it's appropriate. So we talked about the first phase being education, the second phase collecting the communities of interest, the COIs, and in the fall we begin to put it all together. We'll have census data, the reapportionment data, and the communities of interest, and we can begin to draw the district lines. We'll be doing these in public meetings where you can tell us how we're doing. In November, we'll have our first draft maps, and we have to put them out in public without making any changes, but you all get to submit your thoughts. Let us know what we got right and what we could do better. And then we'll work on the maps again, and in December, we'll post our second set of maps. And again, you can tell us what we got right and what we could do better. It's looking like either late 2021 or early 2022, we'll be submitting the 4 maps. As I said, as we asked, please be patient with us as we're trying to figure out exactly what our timelines are going to be. Rosette, we just went through the process and the opportunities to engage. So what are the next steps? How can people get involved?
Well, if we could go back for just a second, I just wanted to say we have a similar sort of last stage as you do. But again, with at this point, not very firm dates or timelines because of the uncertainty around when the census data is actually going to get here and we'll be able to use it. But once we receive that census data, we will draw a draft map. There are timing requirements. We have to post it and allow opportunity for the public to comment. And then a second map, more public comment. Currently, our deadline for adopting a final map is December 15th. But again, we are, as you are, we're monitoring the situation and we are working with stakeholders, and we are going to do our best to have a process that allows for robust public participation.
Right.
But as for opportunities to engage, this is my last. One other thing I wanted to say: we also post our agendas, and all of our business is conducted in English, but we provide language translation in a number of languages, and you can find that information on our website. But so Kim, can you pull up my next slide? How can the public get involved? So you can attend one of our IRC meetings. We meet twice a month on Thursdays, and you can find our schedules and our agendas at our website. And I hope you can see that. But our website is sandiegocounty.gov/redistricting. They're all public, and like I said, they're posted, and you can comment on our agendas. You can speak at our meetings. You can provide comment before, during, or after the meetings by email, by phone, by letter, whatever works for you. As I already mentioned, we're going to be doing these educational events. You can request a presentation similar to the one tonight, and you can go to our website. There will be a button there that you can just easily brings up a form to request a commissioner. You can send us an email. If you don't want to request your own, for your organization, one of these presentations, you can check out our website. And as we schedule these events, most of them will be widely open to the public. You can just sign up to attend one. And of course, we want to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. Please send us any comments either to our email or you can send us, a letter via snail mail, if that's okay to say. And again, you can attend a meeting and provide us input there. And then finally, you can go to our website and subscribe to receive our emails. And you'll receive updates and announcements, and you'll receive our meeting agendas and all of that. So we hope to hear from you. How about you, Patricia? Why don't you tell us how the public can get involved with the state's efforts?
Sure. Kim, can you put up our 5 steps? They're very similar to the ones that you just shared. So you can, the next slide. Thanks. You can stay in touch by following us on social media. Our handle is @WeDrawTheLines.ca. You can spread the word. To date, the community has requested over 100 presentations, and the state commissioners are open to do even more. We are hosting 2 live statewide sessions, one in English on April 20th and one in Spanish on April 26th. And those will be done by our commissioners. You can get details on these and other presentations on our website. We also have a presentation that shows all the commissioners already. So if you just want to share that video, you can do that, or watch it, you can do that as well. We have a speaker form on our website as well. A third way is be informed. Sign up for our newsletter on our website. And it tells you what's happening, when our meetings are, who we've hired, what we're thinking about, and what's moving forward. We do have rotating chairs, so it's a great opportunity when you receive our newsletter to hear a little bit from each of the chairs. Organize your community. Visit our website for more information on redistricting. Soon, we will have tools that can help you capture those stories we discussed earlier and to draw your community maps. And finally, advocate for your community. Submit community maps and also participate in the public district lines drawing sessions. Thank you, Kim, for having the slide up. Rosette, Any parting words before we take questions?
I'd like to thank the league again, and also all of you who joined us tonight. I truly appreciate you spending this time with us. If you've gotten any takeaway message, I hope it's this. I hope you know this. We are committed to drawing a county district map that will accurately and fairly represent the residents of the county, and to make it possible for as broad and diverse public participation as is possible to participate in the process. Woo, that was a lot of P's. We are eager to hear from you. Redistricting only happens once every 10 years. Now's your chance. We hope you will help us by participating with us to do this work and by spreading the word about redistricting. How about you, Patricia? Closing comments?
Yeah, I mean, Rosette, I could not have said it better. I think the main thing we hope you get from today is that we do want you to participate. Please do participate. And just a reminder that we cannot take any input on COYs, lines, or districts tonight, but we welcome your question. And thank you again, League of Women Voters, for having us and really providing this space for all of us to learn from each other.
Thank you. Both of you have just, I think, illustrated beautifully how complicated this entire task is going to be. And I wish you much joy of it and lots of good hard work. Now we have some questions and I will read them to you, and then you two get to decide who's going to answer the question. There?
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, our first question is, as commissioners for different levels of government, one of you is being paid and one of you is not. How do you think whether you're being paid affects the amount of work you want to do or are expected to do?
Well, that's a really, that's an interesting question. I can only answer that from a personal point of view, and I can just say that I volunteered to do this job, and I'm going to put the work and the effort and the time necessary to do a good job. And I have the impression that my fellow commissioners are going to do the same thing. I will say that it is a lot of time and a fair bit of effort, and it may be difficult for those people who are who have demanding jobs to set aside the time to do this kind of work. I will leave it at that. Patricia, is there anything you want to add?
Well, since I'm the one who's getting paid, it is a stipend. It's not a full-fledged salary, and I would say that I had no idea how much time I would be putting into this, and it really, paid or not paid, I think all of us on the commission would be putting in a significant amount of time. When we first started, we didn't have staff. We had 2 part-time people, and so we've had to start from figuring out what we were doing, hiring staff, creating our structure, and all the different pieces. I can easily spend, 40 hours a week and more just working on things for the commission. We're roll up our sleeves and get involved. I head up 2 of the zones, so I'm doing the outreach for San Diego and Imperial County, as well as the other border, the far northern border of California, and I'm also doing the statewide outreach. I'm enjoying every minute of it, and I'm not sure how some of my fellow commissioners who have full-time jobs as well as doing this work are doing it. But we're trying to accommodate. We have a meeting on Saturdays. We have meetings in the evenings. We're just trying to work as much as we can to figure out how we can do this work as well as our day jobs.
Thank you. The next question is, are the eligibility requirements for the county commission from your county, or are they set by the state?
I have a staff member, Barbara Jimenez, who's on the call with me. I want to say that it was legislation at the state level, but can you answer that so that we provide accurate information?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So we have the elections code, and you're correct, legislation from the state.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, the next question. I have heard that redistricting commissioners do not have to reside in the areas that they represent. Is that accurate?
Not for the county redistricting commission. You have to live in the county. And I would imagine you have to live in the state of California. Right.
Yeah, I mean, you have to live in the state of California, but I don't represent San Diego and Imperial County. I represent the entire state of California. And so we have so many counties, we don't have that many seats. And so we all just represent the full state of California.
Okay, next question. Rosette, how did the San Diego County process determine that a person had analytic skills?
Well, you had to describe your experience and your background and perhaps your education. And so for me, I studied analytical writing. I taught analytical writing and critical thinking. My undergraduate degree is in biology. There's a lot, the scientific method is pretty analytical. So it was really the strength of your application. And as I said, the clerk of the county board of supervisors read those 300 applications, and from those 300 applications, roughly, culled the 60 most qualified applicants. So it was, you had to explain why you believed you had analytical skills.
And for the state, we had that same, it was one of our criteria as well. And I used my experience in looking up data and using data to create programs and to write narratives and reports and things like that.
Thank you. Okay. How is the statewide database at UC Berkeley involved in redistricting, and where in law, if anywhere, is there a mandate for that involvement? That may be a little bit more in the weeds than either of you know, but if you know the answer, feel free to answer.
I can answer the first part. I'm not sure. The state legislature, created and funds the statewide database, and when the census releases the data, it goes to the statewide database, and then they need a certain amount of time to process the data, especially reallocating the incarcerated people to the right counties and things like that. And that's where all redistricting efforts will have access to that data. Others use the statewide database for research projects and others. So it's an open database for all to be able to use.
I'm impressed. Thank you. Okay, next question. Will you illuminate the #2 ranked criterion, Voting Rights Act, to help familiarize us with what that means?
Do you want to take that one, Patricia? I mean, I could too, but it's up to you. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so the Voting Rights Act, we can't really look at it very closely until we have all the information from the redistricting process. I mean, not from the redistricting process, my apologies, from the census. But we will start looking this summer at kind of racial polarized voting and seeing where communities where we might have those communities that would classify for Voting Rights Act. There are several communities, and I don't have them at the tip of my tongue, that when the VRA had, certain counties that needed to report to the Department of Justice, we did in the state of California have certain counties that needed to do that. But for for us, it's really important that we look at what communities need, what minority communities need to be able to feel that they can have proper representation.
Okay,
And I can maybe add just a little bit to that.
okay,
I think, and we can also follow up later if need be. But the Voting Rights Act, as I understand it, is sort of a 3-part test or 3-question test. And the first question is a minority community geographically compact enough that it could be the majority of a hypothetical district? So that's 1. Do you meet that test? 2, does the majority block, is their voting typically able to defeat the preferences of the minority community?
Right.
And then that's the second part. And the third is, has the minority community faced historic discrimination, or I think that's what it is. So if you meet that test, if a community can answer yes to those questions, then that's when the Voting Rights Act protects those communities. And if the answer to those questions is yes, a district in which a minority community is the majority must be drawn. Okay?
okay. All right, next question. What proportion of the county is unincorporated and what proportion of the population lives there?
I'm definitely punting that to my expert, Barbara.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So according to Sandag's 2020 data, about 15.4% of our county is in the unincorporated area.
But it's a huge geographic area.
Yes,
So
yeah, about 545,000 of the total population.
Thank you, Barbara. So glad you're with me tonight.
We're a team.
And, it's interesting because when you look at the state of California, a lot of times we think of Northern California ending at Sacramento, but there's a lot more of California going north. And it's a very similar, very rural, very lot of land, and the population is smaller, and they don't really have access to the internet and other things. So we need to come up with creative ways to do outreach and engage.
All right. Are educational presentations and materials available in languages other than English?
Yes.
Yeah, we're working really hard. Well, as I said, we'll have a Spanish presentation that will be live on the 26th of April, and you can go on our website to get more information. And as requests, when communities request, we can do other languages or provide a translator.
And the same, I think, will be the case for the county, English and Spanish, and then as requested.
Okay. Next question. Well, this is actually more of a comment than a question. So impressed with both speakers. Their commitment and knowledge is obvious. Does Patricia speak to residents in other counties in the state?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Yes, we have 14 commissioners, and when you do the wanting the form of a speaker's form, you can request any of the commissioners to speak for you. So I have spoken in other parts of the county and statewide as well. And I am bilingual, so I can do it in Spanish as well.
Thank you. Can people from outside of San Diego County make comments at the public hearings?
Again, I'm going to punt this to Barbara. I don't know that we monitor where people are calling in from or sending in emails from.
Yeah, so I'm hearing this two different ways. One is there's no limitation in terms of who's calling in or in terms of the IRC meetings. I think when we get down to the public hearing input, I'm trying to recall, I read something about the residents of the community, and but we can double check and follow up if needed, but that's what I'm recalling as it recalls to when we talk about public hearings. So it doesn't have to be the voters, but residents of those, if I recall correctly.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we have a question that is, let's try this. California redistricting commissioners are paid or were paid up to $80,000 in today's dollars for their work in last decade's redistricting cycle. Even at the local level, independent redistricting is a lot of work. How do you feel about the pay state commissioners are currently earning? And should local commissioners be paid too? And if so, about how much?
Well, that's, a really interesting, that's a good question. And I don't have an answer for that.
I would say, it kind of, back in the days when I started my career, you would intern for free. And you would go to DC and you would say, hey, I'm going to learn a lot and make a lot of connections. And everybody was expected to work for free. Well, that was really a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to work for free. It's a privilege to be able to volunteer that many hours for free. And it is a barrier for people who would like to participate and serve their county or their state in that way. So I do believe that pay is important, because it is, the payment may not be large, but you do need some compensation, and also lower that barrier so that more of the diverse communities of our state can participate in the redistricting process.
Very good.
I would just like to assure that questioner that I don't really think at this point that the fact that we're paid or not paid is affecting the work that we're doing. I know that we're committed to, as I said, drawing fair maps and making sure that we get the most public participation that we can.
I would completely agree with that. We keep our eye on the prize at all times.
Thank you. And that's, I think, very clear from both of you. So I want to thank you both for coming tonight. It has been incredibly interesting and educational. And as I said before, I think both of you are going to be working so hard. Thank you for doing that. And thank you again for coming. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Lori, and she's going to tell everybody about the survey that is at the end of the webinar. Lori.
Excellent. Thank you, Anne. And thank you to both of the presenters. It was a very informative presentation, and I really do appreciate your recognizing the League's work in redistricting and the long time activism we've had around this process for years and years. So thank you. Thank you for calling that out. I am going to invite everybody who attended here tonight to please participate in a survey that we are going to send you. Let's see, I can put it in the chat if anybody wants to click there and go ahead and do it right now. It's just we like to get feedback on how we performed and get your feedback on how you think this presentation went, etc. So it looks like Kim has already put it in the chat. So go to the chat, click on the link, and please complete the survey that we've put there for you so that we can do this better next time we do it for you. Back to you, Anne.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening, and thanks again for coming. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.